My granddaughter Lily had a way of looking at the world that reminded me so much of my late wife Eleanor. It was in her eyes a quiet, knowing seriousness that saw right through the noise to the heart of things. At 10 years old, she was already more of a grown-up than her parents. That day, she sat on the worn ottoman in my living room, the one Eleanor had reupholstered twice, and twisted a loose thread with her small fingers. Her parents, my son Michael and his wife Charlotte, were in the kitchen, their voices a low, syrupy murmur I had learned to distrust. "Grandpa?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. She didn't look at me, just kept her focus on that thread as if it held the most important secret in the world. "What is it, sweet pea?" I asked, keeping my own voice light. I didn't want Michael or Charlotte to hear. They had a habit of treating any private conversation I had with Lily as a potential conspiracy. She finally looked up, and the gravity in her expression sent a cold spike of dread through my chest. It was a look of pure, unadulterated fear, not for herself, but for me. "You have to be careful," she whispered, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Mom and Dad, they're talking about you." I leaned forward, my old bones creaking in protest. "Talking about what, Lily?" Tears welled in her eyes, and she shook her head, a frantic little motion. "Bad things. They think you can't hear them when they're in the car. But I can. Mom said, you're getting to be a burden." The word hung in the air between us, ugly and sharp. "She said it's time for you to go somewhere, safer, a home." And Dad didn't say anything. He just kept driving. My hand, which had been resting on my knee, froze. A home. The clinical, sterile phrase they used to disguise the truth, a place where old people were sent to be forgotten. "And," she continued, her voice cracking, "Mom was talking about money. She said the house would finally be theirs, and all your savings would help them get stable." "Grandpa, they're planning to lock you away and keep all your money." The cry was torn from her, a raw, desperate plea. She launched herself off the ottoman and into my arms, burying her face in my old flannel shirt. I held her tight, my own heart feeling like a block of ice. I could hear Charlotte's brittle laughter from the kitchen, a sound that had always grated on my nerves but now sounded like a funeral bell. I stroked Lily's hair, murmuring soothing sounds I didn't feel. Something inside me, something that had been soft and forgiving for 82 years, broke. It didn't shatter into a million pieces. It hardened. It turned from glass into granite. In that single, horrifying moment, holding my terrified granddaughter, the man my son knew as his gentle, aging father died. A different man began to take his place. Michael and Charlotte came back into the living room, all smiles and false concern. "There you are, sweetie," Charlotte chirped, her eyes flicking from Lily to me with a saccharine sweetness that made my teeth ache. "Don't bother your grandpa too much. He needs his rest." I looked at my son, Michael, my boy, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, to fish, to frame a wall. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at a spot on the carpet, his face a mask of weary resignation. He was a passenger in his own life, and his wife was at the wheel, driving them straight off a cliff. I gave Lily one last squeeze. "Go with your mom and dad now," I whispered into her hair. "And don't you worry. Grandpa knows how to take care of himself, I promise." She looked at me, her tear-filled eyes searching my face for reassurance. I gave her a slow, deliberate wink. A flicker of understanding, or maybe just hope, crossed her face before she let go and ran to her mother's side. As they left, Charlotte paused at the door. "We'll call you tomorrow, Roy. We need to have a serious chat about the future." "I'll look forward to it," I said, and the voice that came out of my mouth was mine, but it felt like it belonged to a stranger. It was calm, level, cold. The door clicked shut, and I was alone in the silence of the house I had built with my own 2 hands. The silence was absolute. For a long time, I just stood there, listening to the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a sound that had measured out the happy years with Eleanor and the quiet, lonely years after. Each tick felt like a hammer blow, forging my pain into something else. Righteous anger, cold resolve. They thought I was a burden, an old fool to be managed, medicated, and put away. They thought the sum of my life, this house, my savings, the legacy I had built through decades of sweat and calloused hands was nothing more than their personal emergency fund. I walked slowly through the house, my hand trailing along the smooth plaster of the hallway wall. I had mixed and troweled this plaster myself. I remembered Eleanor standing right here, a smudge of white on her nose, laughing as I complained about getting the finish just right. "It's a home, Roy, not a museum," she had said. "It just needs to be filled with love." We had filled it. We had filled it with laughter, with arguments, with the smell of her baking and the sound of Michael's feet pounding up and down the stairs. We had poured everything we had into our son. Tuition for a university he barely scraped through. A down payment on his first apartment. A wedding far more lavish than they could afford, because Charlotte insisted. I went to my old roll-top desk and pulled out the thick folder of financial records. I wasn't a rich man by a millionaire's standards, but I had been careful. I had worked in construction my whole life, starting as a laborer and ending up owning my own successful contracting firm. I sold it 10 years ago and invested the money wisely. It was supposed to be my security. It was supposed to be the safety net that would let me live out my days in this house, with my memories. I remembered a conversation with Eleanor, not long before she passed. Michael had come to us, his head hung low, asking for money again. Another one of Charlotte's failed business ventures this time, a boutique selling overpriced candles. Eleanor had been firm. "Roy, we can't keep doing this. Your kindness is a gift, but they're starting to see it as an entitlement. Don't let them mistake your love for weakness." I hadn't listened. I had given him the money. I had chosen to see my son's desperation instead of his wife's greed. I had chosen to be weak. No more. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind, no longer a gentle warning but a battle cry. I would not be a burden. I would not be a victim. I was Roy Hayes. I built things. And now I was going to build the perfect, inescapable trap. The plan began to form, not as a single flash of inspiration, but as a slow, meticulous construction. It had to be legal. It had to be precise, and it had to be devastating. They wanted my money. They wanted this house. Fine, I would give it to them, but I would give it to them on my terms. And by the time they realized what they had, it would be too late. The house would not be their salvation. It would be their tombstone. My first call was not to Michael. It was to a man named Arthur Vance. His website described him as a specialist in estate law and asset protection, with a reputation for being a shark. He sounded expensive. He sounded perfect. I scheduled a meeting for the following afternoon. When Charlotte called that next morning, her voice oozing with feigned concern, I was ready. "Roy, how are you feeling today? You seemed a little quiet yesterday." I injected a note of weary confusion into my voice. "Oh, hello, Charlotte. I'm all right, just a bit tired, I suppose. These old bones, you know." "Of course," she said, the condescension dripping from every syllable. "That's what Michael and I wanted to talk to you about. We're worried about you here, all alone in this big house. It's a lot to manage at your age." "It's my home," I said, letting a hint of pathetic attachment creep in. We know, and we want what's best for you. We've been looking into some lovely communities, places with professional staff, activities, other people your age. It would be so much better for you, no more worrying about cooking or cleaning or yard work." It was a beautifully rehearsed speech. Every word was designed to sound like care, but it was all about containment. They weren't finding me a community, they were finding me a cage. "Oh," I said, as if the thought had never occurred to me. I don't know, Charlotte. This house, we'll handle the house, Roy. Don't you worry about a thing. We can take that burden off your shoulders. Just think about it, okay? We'll come by this weekend to discuss the options." "Okay, Charlotte," I mumbled, "if you think it's best." I hung up the phone and my hand was perfectly steady. The act was easier than I expected. Years of being seen as the quiet, agreeable old man had given me the perfect camouflage. They saw what they wanted to see, a relic, fading and compliant. They had no idea they were talking to an architect of their own destruction. My meeting with Arthur Vance took place in a sterile, high-rise office downtown that smelled of leather and money. Vance was a man in his late 50s, with sharp eyes and a suit that probably cost more than my first car. He listened without interruption as I laid out the entire situation, from Lily's warning to my conversation with Charlotte that morning. I didn't embellish, I just stated the facts. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, tapping a silver pen against a legal pad. He didn't look at me with pity, which I was grateful for. He looked at me with a kind of professional curiosity. "Mr. Hayes," he began, his voice a low baritone, "what you're describing is a textbook case of elder financial abuse, or at least the intent to commit it. We can fight this in a number of ways. We can file for a restraining order, we can send a cease and desist." "No," I said, cutting him off. "That's not what I want." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh, then what is it you want, Roy?" "I want justice," I said simply. "Not the court's version, my version. They want my house and my money. I want to give it to them, and I want you to help me do it in such a way that it ruins them." A slow smile spread across Arthur Vance's face. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who has just been offered a particularly interesting hunt. "I see," he said. "You're not looking for a shield. You're looking for a sword. Tell me your plan." I spent the next hour detailing my idea: the creation of an irrevocable trust, the slow, secret removal of my personal assets, the strategic transfer of the house deed, the timing, the final reveal. Vance listened, nodding occasionally, making notes on his pad. When I was done, he was silent for a full minute. "Roy," he said finally, all traces of the slick lawyer gone, replaced by something that sounded like genuine admiration. "It's vicious, it's elegant, and it's almost entirely legal. I love it." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "Let's get to work." The next few weeks were a blur of activity, all of it hidden behind a carefully constructed facade of decline. I began my performance in earnest. When Michael and Charlotte came over that weekend, armed with glossy brochures for places like Golden Meadows and Sunset Villa, I played the part of a confused, reluctant old man to perfection. I let my hand tremble slightly as I took the brochures. I squinted at the pictures of smiling seniors playing shuffleboard. "It all looks so busy," I'd say. "I'm not sure I'd fit in." "Nonsense, Dad," Michael said, his voice straining with false enthusiasm. "You'd make new friends. It would be good for you." Charlotte laid a hand on my arm, a gesture that was meant to be comforting but felt like a brand. "Roy, we're only thinking of your safety. What if you fell? No one would know for hours. In one of these places, there's always someone on call." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. They were concerned about me falling, while they were actively planning to push me off a financial and emotional cliff. "And the house," she continued, her voice softening into a purr. "We would take care of it. You wouldn't have to worry about the property taxes, the upkeep. It would be our way of helping you, and you'd be helping us. Michael's work has been so unstable." So that was it. The truth, peeking out from behind the curtain of lies. Michael was likely unemployed or underemployed again, and Charlotte's expensive tastes hadn't subsided. They weren't just greedy, they were desperate. That made them predictable. "Well," I sighed, letting my shoulders slump. "Let me think about it. It's a big decision." They left, confident that they were winning, that the old man was slowly but surely bending to their will. The moment their car was out of the driveway, I straightened up, my mind clear and sharp. The performance was draining, but every condescending word they uttered, every false smile they gave me, was like gasoline on the fire of my resolve. My days took on a new rhythm. In the mornings, I would handle the logistics of my plan. I met with Vance multiple times, signing documents that created the Roy Hayes Irrevocable Trust. All of my stocks, bonds, and the cash from the sale of my business were transferred into it. The trustee was a bank, not a person, and the terms were ironclad. I would receive a modest but comfortable monthly stipend for my living expenses. The principal was untouchable. The sole beneficiary upon my death was my granddaughter Lily, with the funds to be held in trust for her until she turned 25. Michael and Charlotte were not mentioned anywhere in the document. Legally, my liquid fortune no longer existed as far as they were concerned. Then I found my new home. It was a small two-bedroom condo in a quiet, well-maintained building about 30 minutes away. It was on the ground floor with a small patio that got the morning sun. It was less than a quarter of the size of my house, but as I stood in the empty living room, I felt a sense of peace. It was manageable. It was safe. It was mine. I bought it outright with a portion of the funds before they were locked away in the trust. The most difficult part was the secret move. I started with the things that mattered. Eleanor's jewelry box, her collection of antique teacups, my photo albums. I packed them carefully into boxes in the dead of night, loading them into my old pickup truck and driving them to a small storage unit I had rented under a different name. Next came my workshop. My tools were like extensions of my own hands. The saws, the drills, the sanders, the hand-carved chisels my own father had given me. Taking apart my workshop felt like a desecration. Each tool I wrapped in oilcloth and packed away was a memory. But I did it, methodically, silently. The big machines I arranged to have picked up by a moving company at an odd hour, paying them cash and swearing them to secrecy. I left the house looking lived in, but hollowed out. I left the generic furniture, the old television, the kitchenware. I left everything a person would need to live, but I removed everything that had made it my home. It was becoming a stage, set for the final act. During this time, I needed a way to solidify my case, to have proof that couldn't be denied. On Vance's advice, I bought a small, voice-activated digital recorder. The next time Michael and Charlotte came to visit, I tucked it under a cushion on the sofa. They came in, bringing a casserole that Charlotte had clearly bought from a store. She was in an expansive mood. "Roy, we're so glad you're coming around to the idea," she said, bustling around my kitchen as if she already owned it. "We found the perfect place. It's called The Willows. It has a 5-star rating." "We put down a deposit, Dad," Michael added, avoiding my gaze. "Just to hold a room for you. It's a lovely corner unit." A deposit. With my money, no doubt. They were spending my inheritance to lock me away. The audacity was breathtaking. I just nodded slowly. "That's thoughtful of you, son." Later, I pretended to doze off in my armchair. Their voices dropped, but the recorder was sensitive. "He's taking it better than I thought," Michael whispered. "He's just old." Charlotte's voice was crisp and dismissive. "He knows he can't manage. As soon as the papers are signed for the house, we can sell it. The market is hot right now. We could clear 7 figures, easy. That would solve all our problems." "What about his furniture, his workshop stuff?" Michael asked, a faint note of something in his voice. Guilt? Nostalgia? It was too little, too late. "Oh, that old junk," Charlotte scoffed. "We'll have an estate sale. Let some other sentimental fools pick over it. I've already been talking to a designer. We can get rid of this awful dark wood paneling, open up the whole main floor. It will be fabulous for entertaining." I didn't move a muscle. I kept my breathing even, my eyes closed. Inside, I was a coiled spring. Every word was another nail in their coffin. My coffin, they thought, but it was theirs. They were building it themselves. Retrieving the recorder later that night, I listened to the playback in the dark. Hearing their disembodied voices, so full of greed and contempt, erased any last flicker of doubt, any residual sentimentality for the son I had raised. He was gone. The man who existed now was a stranger, a hollow man propped up by his wife's ambition. The final piece of the plan was the most delicate. I had to time the transfer of the house perfectly. Arthur Vance handled the deed. It was a quit-claim deed, gifting the property at 12 Elm Street free and clear to Michael and Charlotte Hayes. We prepared the paperwork but didn't file it with the county clerk yet. That would be the very last step. I called Lily when I knew she'd be home from school and her parents would be out. I used a burner phone I'd bought, a simple flip phone for untraceable calls. "Grandpa?" Her voice was small and worried. "It's me, Sweet Pea. I just wanted to hear your voice." "Are you okay? Mom said you agreed to move." "I'm more than okay," I told her, my voice full of a confidence I hoped she could feel. "Grandpa's just reorganizing things, and I want you to remember something for me. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, I love you more than anything, and I have taken care of you, always." "I love you too, Grandpa," she whispered. "I miss you." "I miss you too. I'll see you again soon, I promise." That was the fuel I needed for the final push. The final provocation came a week later. Charlotte called, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "Roy, it's all set. Your room at the Willows will be ready on the 1st of the month. That's Saturday. We'll come by in the morning to pick you up. Just have a small suitcase ready with your essentials. We'll handle the rest." Handle the rest was a euphemism for liquidate my life. "And," she added, "if you could sign the house papers then, it would make the transition so much smoother. Our lawyer can meet us there." Their lawyer. Not mine. They thought I was that naive. "Of course, Charlotte," I said, my voice frail as autumn leaves. "Whatever you think is best. I'll be ready on Saturday." "Good," she said, satisfied. "We're so happy you're finally being sensible about this. It's for your own good." For my own good. The 4 most dangerous words in the English language. The last few days in the house were surreal. I walked through the empty rooms, the ghosts of memories swirling around me. I slept on a mattress on the floor in my old bedroom, my suitcase packed and sitting by the door. On Friday afternoon, I drove the last load of my personal effects to my new condo. I set up my bed, put a few pictures on the wall, and stocked the fridge. On Friday evening, I drove back to the house on Elm Street one last time. It stood dark and silent under the moon. I didn't go inside. I just looked at it. I had built it with love and hope. I had filled it with a family, and now I was leaving it as an instrument of justice. I felt a pang of sadness, not for the house, but for what it represented. A past that was well and truly over. A son I had lost. A family that had rotted from the inside out. But the sadness was quickly replaced by a cold, clean sense of purpose. Roy Hayes, the generous father and doting grandfather, was a character I had played for years. The real Roy Hayes, the builder, the planner, the man who understood foundations and load-bearing walls, was in control now, and he knew that some structures were too compromised to be saved. They had to be brought down. Early Saturday morning, long before the sun came up, I put the final touches on my plan. Arthur Vance had filed the quitclaim deed with the county clerk's office the previous afternoon. As of 4:00 p.m. on Friday, the house and the property it stood on legally belonged to Michael and Charlotte. They just didn't know it yet. I went inside the hollowed-out house. In the center of the dining room table, where we had shared so many holiday meals, I placed a single, thick manila envelope. Inside was a multi-page letter I had typed myself, a copy of the newly filed deed, and a printout of the property's latest tax assessment. I also included a copy of the front page of the irrevocable trust agreement with the key clauses about the beneficiaries and the untouchable principal highlighted in yellow. Next, I set up the digital recorder, the one with their incriminating conversation on it. I plugged it into a small but powerful Bluetooth speaker I had hidden behind a potted plant. I set it to play on a loop. Finally, I walked through the house one last time. I touched the frame of the back door, where I had marked Michael's height every year on his birthday. I looked out the kitchen window at the big oak tree in the backyard, the one with the tire swing I had hung for him. Goodbye to all that. I let myself out the back door, locking it behind me. I walked around to the front and put the key under the mat, just as I'd told Charlotte I would. Then I got into my old truck and drove away without looking back. I didn't drive to the Willows. I drove to my new condo. I made a pot of coffee, the good stuff I saved for special occasions, and sat on my new sofa. I imagined the scene that was about to unfold. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Charlotte. I let it go to voicemail. "Roy? It's us. We're here. The door is locked." "Oh, wait. Michael found the key. We're coming in. Where are you? We were supposed to meet the lawyer here at 10:30. "Don't be difficult." I could picture them walking in. Charlotte, with her purse clutched like a weapon, her face a mask of impatience. Michael, trailing behind her, looking miserable and guilty. They would see the empty space where my coat rack used to be. They'd call my name. The house would echo with silence. Then they would see the envelope on the dining room table. Charlotte, ever the impatient one, would tear it open. Michael would be looking over her shoulder. They would see the deed first. Confusion, then a dawning, greedy excitement. He'd done it. The old fool had actually signed the house over to them. Then they would start reading the letter. My letter. "Dear Michael and Charlotte," it began, "if you are reading this, it means your plan has succeeded. You have possession of the house. Congratulations. It is now legally yours, as of 4:00 p.m. yesterday. The deed is filed. The property is in your names." I imagine the smug, triumphant look they would exchange. They'd think this was a sentimental farewell letter. "I'm sure you came here today expecting to take me to the Willows and to have me sign some papers. As you can see, I have saved you the trouble. I won't be going to the Willows. I won't be going to any home. I have made my own arrangements." The confusion would start to creep in. "You see, I know everything. I know you think I'm a burden. I know you have been planning to put me away and take control of my assets to fund your lifestyle. I know you see this house not as a home full of memories, but as a cash machine to solve your financial irresponsibility. I know you see my life's work as your personal piggy bank." And right about then, as the shock was registering on their faces, the speaker would kick in. First, Charlotte's voice, sharp and clear in the silent house. "As soon as the papers are signed for the house, we can sell it. The market is hot right now. We could clear 7 figures, easy. That would solve all our problems." Then Michael's weak reply, "What about his furniture, his workshop stuff?" And Charlotte's derisive scoff, "Oh, that old junk. We'll have an estate sale. I've already been talking to a designer. We can get rid of this awful dark wood paneling. It will be fabulous for entertaining." I pictured the blood draining from their faces, the horror of being confronted by their own recorded treachery. The recording would continue, playing every damning word they had said, looping over and over again in the cavernous, empty rooms. Their eyes would fly back to the letter in their shaking hands. "As I said, the house is yours. Enjoy it. I have removed all of my personal belongings, anything that held any sentimental value. The rest of the old junk is yours to deal with as you see fit. You should also know that the property taxes are due next month. They are approximately $22,000 a year. The heating bill for a house this size was over $800 last month alone. The roof will need replacing in the next 5 years, which I estimate will cost around $30,000. It is, as you said, Charlotte, a lot to manage. I'm sure you were counting on my savings to cover these expenses while you prepared to sell. About that, please see the attached summary of the Roy Hayes Irrevocable Trust. As of 2 weeks ago, all of my liquid assets, every penny from my investments, my savings, the sale of my company were placed into this trust. The terms are quite clear. I receive a small stipend to live on. The principal cannot be touched by anyone. Upon my death, the entire contents of the trust will be transferred to a new trust for the sole benefit of my granddaughter, Lily, to be managed by a bank until she is 25 years old. You will not see a single dime of it, ever. So congratulations on your new house. It is a beautiful, expensive, and completely unfunded liability. You wanted it? You got it. You wanted my money? It's gone. You have traded a father for a mortgage. I hope it was worth it. Do not try to contact me. You will not find me. My number is changed. My life is my own now. You made your choice when you decided I was a burden to be discarded. This is simply the consequence of that choice. Goodbye, Roy Hayes." Just as I was imagining Charlotte's shriek of pure, unadulterated rage, my phone rang again. It was Arthur Vance. "Roy," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Just got a call from a rather hysterical lawyer. Seems his clients, a Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, are at your old property and are displeased." They were shouting something about fraud and theft. Their lawyer, however, seems to have grasped the beautiful, airtight legality of the situation rather quickly. He was mostly calling to ask if there was any room for negotiation. "And what did you tell him, Arthur?" I asked, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "I told him that you had left the building, and that as far as we were concerned, the matter was closed." He was not happy. Apparently his clients are now screaming at each other. The phrase, "you and your stupid, senile old man," was used. I leaned my head back on the sofa and laughed. It was a real, deep, cleansing laugh. The sound of a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying finally being lifted. "Thank you, Arthur," I said, "for everything." "The pleasure," he replied, "was all mine. Enjoy your new life, Roy." I hung up the phone, and the silence that filled my new, small apartment wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. It was the sound of freedom. I learned about the aftermath in bits and pieces over the next few months, mostly through the town's gossip mill, which I could now observe from a safe distance. They tried to sell the house, of course. But they were in a rush, desperate for cash. They listed it too high, then dropped the price dramatically, spooking potential buyers. The enormous tax bill came due, and they had to take out a high-interest loan just to cover it. The strain, financial and emotional, shattered their already fragile marriage. Charlotte, deprived of the windfall she had been counting on, became vicious. Michael, confronted with the full scope of his weakness and betrayal, crumbled. Last I heard, they were selling the house at a loss to a developer just to escape the crushing debt. They were getting divorced. Charlotte was moving back in with her parents, and Michael was renting a room in a shared apartment across town. They lost the house, they lost the money they never had, and they lost each other. They were left with nothing but the ugly truth of who they were. I, on the other hand, was building a new life. I set up a small workshop in my spare bedroom. I started making small things, carved birds, intricate puzzle boxes, children's toys. I joined a woodworking club at the local community center and found a new circle of friends, men my age who shared my passion for craftsmanship. We talked about wood grain and joinery, not inheritances and nursing homes. I found a little cafe where the barista knew my order. I took walks by the lake. I read books. My life was simple, but it was profoundly my own. The stipend from the trust was more than enough for my needs. For the first time in years, I felt no obligation, no pressure, no burden. The hardest part was being separated from Lily. I missed her terribly, but I knew that contacting her directly would only put her in the middle of a war zone. My revenge was on her parents, not on her. So I waited. My lawyer, Arthur Vance, became a quiet conduit. He arranged to have my birthday and Christmas gifts sent to her through a neutral third party, simple things I made for her in my workshop. Each one came with a simple note. "I love you. I'm proud of you, Grandpa." One day, about a year after I had disappeared from their lives, I received a letter, forwarded by Vance's office. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky but determined. It was from Lily. "Dear Grandpa," it read, "I know you can't write back to me. That's okay, I just wanted to tell you that I understand. Mom and Dad are different now. They are very unhappy. I heard them fighting before Mom left. She said you ruined them, but I know that's not true. They ruined themselves. I hope you are happy where you are. I hope you have a workshop. I keep the little bluebird you carved for me on my desk. I miss you. I can't wait until I'm old enough to come and find you myself. Love, Lily." I folded the letter carefully and put it in the jewelry box that had belonged to Eleanor. The legacy I was leaving wasn't one of money or property. It was one of self-respect. It was the lesson that you cannot mistake kindness for weakness, and that true strength isn't about how much you can take from others, but about how much you can build for yourself. I picked up a block of maple wood and my favorite carving knife. The future was unwritten. It looked exactly as bright as I was willing to make it. And for the first time in a very long time, my hands felt steady. I was a builder again, and my new foundation was solid. It was built on peace, integrity, and the quiet satisfaction of justice served. The house on Elm Street was just wood and nails. A home, I had finally remembered, is something you carry inside you, and mine was, at last, secure.